They say this place is swarming with money. It's been stored there for centuries, but no one managed to take it away from this island. Treasure hunters have been bewitched with this place since 1795. Many people have tried their luck looking for the treasure that could be hidden there by the Spanish pirates or even by the Knights Templar. But today, it's impossible to get there, as it's a private place. So all you can do is book an ocean tour around this island. Otherwise, you can take a peek at it in a TV reality show starring the Legina brothers, Rick and Marty, who are a team of enthusiasts looking for the treasures of Oak Island in Nova Scotia, Canada. Yeah, seems like there's no place where TV producers can't get to. One of the most famous discoveries out there was the so-called Money Pit. Despite the promising name, it wasn't full of money. Now we have to jump to 200 years ago. The Money Pit was first found by a 16-year-old kid in 1795. One day, Daniel McGinnis went fishing at Oak Island. He saw a tree there. Unsurprisingly, it was an oak, and it had weird markings. They didn't seem to be natural, so Daniel decided to check the area. He then saw a sunken patch of ground and started digging immediately. His two friends helped him out, but instead of treasures, the guys only found logs placed underground at regular intervals. It looked like a place where someone could hide money or jewels, but nothing precious was found. However, there was something curious down that pit. Someone found a granite stone there, and it had an engraved inscription on it. There were many attempts to decode it, but most of them ended up in failure. There's one translation though, and it says, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. Yeah, McGinnis and his friends should have dug harder. The next fun thing about the Money Pit is the coconut fiber found down there. They say that large amounts of this fiber were found at a depth of 60 feet. It may not surprise you, but I have to remind you of one thing. Oak Island is in Nova Scotia, Canada. Coconut trees do not grow there. The nearest one is about 1,500 miles from Nova Scotia, which makes it obvious that someone brought this fiber purposefully. Researchers came up with an idea that coconut fiber could have been used to make ropes and lower all the treasures down the pit. Next up, we have not one, but two mysteries. In the late 1800s, the Oak Island Treasure Company was thoroughly inspecting and excavating the island. Everyone believed something enormous was hidden there. These guys managed to drill 153 feet underground. That's like 15 stop signs stacked one on top of the other. You might have guessed that they didn't find pounds of gold and diamonds, but they found a manuscript. There's a theory claiming that it's one of Shakespeare's lost manuscripts. Some scientists believe that it was hidden there by the writer and scientist Francis Bacon, the true author of Shakespeare's works. Yeah, rumor has it was Francis and not William who wrote all the plays and sonnets. But there's no proof it was really so. The Money Pit may be the most popular shaft on Oak Island, but it's not the only one, and it's not the first. Before the Money Pit discovery, treasure hunters were drilling at Smith's Cove. While damming there, they found a wooden piece. It was a U-shaped formation that had Roman numerals. After a more thorough inspection, the specialists realized it was supposedly dated to 1769. The Money Pit was discovered 26 years later. This fact created many speculations that this structure might have been part of the real shaft with treasures everyone was looking for. Now, look at this Templar coin. It wasn't the first discovery on the island, but it was crucial in some way. Even if it may not sound like a big deal today, in medieval times, those coins would amass an insane amount of wealth. They were typically stored in European fortresses. For the treasure hunters, this coin was a sure sign there was more to be found on the island. The logic is simple. If there's one coin of that kind, there must be something else. And they were right. It wasn't the only Templar discovery. On the southwest shore of the island, a crossbow bolt was found. Experts say it dates back to the 13th century. But, once again, that wasn't something the treasure hunters were after. Some more coins were found on the island. Rick and Marty Legina retrieved this precious piece from a swamp. The coin is made of copper, and this time, it originated from Spain. When it was found, the Legina brothers could only see the number 8 engraved on it. But later on, some experts studied this coin and claimed it was made sometime around the 17th century. They managed to clean it well and saw the date 1652 engraved on the back of this coin. There's a theory stating that Spanish explorers found some treasure but hid it instead of taking it to the king. So maybe this coin just dropped out of the chest full of coins and jewels and is part of the treasure everyone was after. Or someone could have accidentally lost it while looking for the treasure. Who knows? One more famous treasure hunter is Gary Drayton. Gary and his team, together with Rick Legina, came across 2 coins while metal detecting the island. Those were 17th century King Charles II Britannia coins. One of them had a very clear inscription on it, stating that the coin was minted back in 1771. Another swamp treasure of possibly Spanish origin is also here. This time, it's a silver ring. A specialist studied it closely and reported that it had been repaired twice. The ring was once made bigger, and it was also made smaller once. It's decorated with a floral design, which was popular in Europe in the 1730s. Among all the other curious things, Rick and Marty Legina found a silver button at Isaac Point. The button's pretty old. It supposedly dates back to the middle of the 18th century, and the notorious money pit was discovered later. This is why it wasn't a big deal of a find. It could simply belong to some farmer peacefully raising livestock on the island. There's no official record of any chest full of gems and coins found on Oak Island, but enthusiasts did find some jewels there. First off, the team found a brooch with a magnificent red gem. They mistakenly thought it was a ruby, but a professional gemologist stated it was a garnet. The piece was made of silver, and it's pretty old. Experts believe it was made around the 15 or 1600s. Another brooch they found didn't have any gems on it, but it had an intricate design. It's a brooch with a leaf design and an ornate rope. There are 13 branches of the leaf, which instantly created more mystery to the whole treasure hunting. First off, there's a carving with a 13-branched tree on a rock on the north shore of this island. What's more, many people believe that the number 13 is important to the Knights Templar. The enthusiasts also found a brooch not far away from the place where Daniel McGinnis, the guy who found the money pit, lived. The brooch was shown to a professional gemologist, Charles Luton Brain. He had to break it to the team that there were no gems adorning this piece of jewelry. In fact, the stone that seemed to be a gem was just a piece of glass. It was processed using a special technique though, so it was leaded glass. The enthusiasts decided to study the brooch even more and found out that part of the brooch was made of gold. The specialists claim that the brooch dates back to the 14th century. Was it the treasure everyone was looking for?
It was September 7, 1695, somewhere at sea near the Horn of Africa. A merchant ship laden with treasure was sailing from present-day Yemen to its home port in India. Its escort had previously been captured by pirates, and now it was their turn, as they spotted a frigate approaching them fast. From its mast pole, a red flag with a Jolly Roger on it fluttered in the wind. Once the battle was over, a British pirate named Henry Avery sailed away with one of the biggest catches ever. It all happened during the golden age of piracy, from 1690 to 1730. At that time, all ships sailing across the Atlantic Ocean feared the European pirates, and you could hear "Arr, matey" in taverns on several continents. From the coast of North America all the way to South America, they would engage merchant vessels and steal their cargo. The Caribbean was a real hotspot for piracy. Do the names Blackbeard and Captain Kidd sound familiar to you? Or is it just me who read too many pirate stories? Anyway, as the 17th century drew to a close, the thirst for wealth made some pirates sail down the eastern coast of Africa and into the Indian Ocean. This is how Avery ended up so far in the east, but he was not the only European to sail in that direction. At the time, the Indian Ocean was teeming with merchant ships, as convoys transported luxury goods or pilgrims from Mecca in the Arabian Peninsula to the Mughal Empire in what is today India. Their rich cargo included silk, spices, incense, and perfumes. In addition to these goods, the East India Company transported everything from cash to jewels on behalf of several European empires, such as England, Netherlands, and France. Sounds pretty much like any pirate's dream, doesn't it? The most attractive targets were ships that belonged to the Mughal emperor, whose impressive realm covered nearly the entire Indian subcontinent. Back in the Caribbean, cloth, timber, and spirits were the most common types of cargo. It didn't seem good enough to the most ambitious pirates. They set their minds on more luxurious catch: gold, gems, and silver they could get in the Indian Ocean. Adam Baldridge, who was a wanted man in British-ruled Jamaica because he took a man's life, was among the first to arrive. Through not-so-honest means, in 1691, he managed to establish a safe haven for pirates on St. Mary's Island, near the remote northern coast of Madagascar, 250 miles off the African mainland. The place sat close to major shipping routes between Europe and Asia. Talk about an ideal location. The pirates made sure to fortify the island. As you can guess, they didn't like unexpected guests and enjoyed staying there, having fun in safety. A Frenchman, Olivier Levasseur, and his English colleague, John Taylor, were among the most successful of those islanders. In 1721, they easily captured a Portuguese treasure ship. It didn't go so smoothly, though. A serious storm damaged the ship, so they had to dock at the island of Reunion for repairs. There were important individuals aboard, such as the Viceroy of Portuguese India and the Bishop of Goa. But the loot was the pirate duo's biggest feat. Cash, diamonds, and porcelain worth hundreds of millions of US dollars in today's money. The catch was so enormous that the pirates didn't even bother to rob the rich passengers. But even this heist couldn't overshadow what Henry Ivory had achieved 26 years earlier. We don't know a lot about the life of this Englishman, except that he was born in Plymouth and that he served in the Merchant Marine. In 1694, Ivory became the first mate aboard Charles II, a privateering ship hired by the Spanish crown. Such ships were privately owned and engaged by nations during major conflicts with other nations. Ivory's ship had an important mission of tracking French smugglers in the Caribbean, but soon the tables would turn. Ivory was good with words and led a successful mutiny in 1694. After he left the unfortunate captain ashore and renamed the ship Fancy, the new captain set sail for Madagascar. There, news reached Ivory that a large fleet of 25 ships was soon to leave for its home in India. Apart from pilgrims, the fleet included several treasure ships owned by the Grand Mughal of India himself. Ivory didn't waste time and assembled an armada of 6 ships to go after the Mughal convoy. As soon as they spotted the fleet, the pirates started a chase. They managed to board an escort vessel, stealing gold and silver worth more than $17 million in today's money. And if that wasn't enough, Ivory and his men went after the flagship named Ganjai Savai. It was the biggest ship in all of India at the time that could protect itself better than the whole fleet combined. The pirates got lucky, as one of their volleys cut the main mast of the Indian ship in half, and there was more serious damage to it. Ivory brought his ship alongside the crippled Mughal ship, and his men boarded the vessel. Indian sailors showed some impressive resistance, even though their captain had abandoned them. Ivory's men won in the end, and they got one of the richest pirate catches ever. They filled their chests with hundreds of thousands of pounds in jewels, gold, and silver. After it, the pirates set course for the Bahamas and used their enormous wealth to convince the local ruler to let them come ashore. Their most prized possession, their ship, the Fancy, was included in that deal. Once the news of the heist reached the Emperor of India, a huge diplomatic scandal broke out. The Grand Mogul was enraged and accused the East India Company of plotting against him, arresting several of their high-ranking officials. The company feared that the Indian leader would cancel their valuable trade agreements, so they decided to do something nice for him and bring to justice the pirates responsible for the theft. Together with British ships equipped for search at sea, they launched one of the first truly international pursuit of Ivory and his shipmates, promising a reward to whoever captured him. The pursuit was only partially successful, as they only managed to catch and trial several pirates. Most of them scattered across Europe and the Americas, keeping their share of the wealth. Ivory earned himself the nickname the King of Pirates because of his adventure in the Indian Ocean. Historians believe he escaped to Ireland with his share of the loot using a false name, George Washington. No, I made that up. Piracy was a risky trade, and not all European fortune seekers were successful in the East. Take Dutch pirate Dirk Schijvers, who entrapped 4 ships in the Indian port of Calicut. He demanded money from the local Indian authorities and the East India Company, but they offered him only half of the requested sum. Finally, they settled on a different amount. When it didn't arrive, Schijvers set another ship ablaze. By this point, both the British and the Indians had had enough, and they hired 10 Indian pirate ships to drive Schijvers away, which they succeeded in doing. The pirate captain was forced to return for repairs to St. Mary's Island empty-handed. Oh well. The end of the 18th century and an increased European presence in the region brought about the end of the golden age of piracy. As the British authorities increased raids on pirate strongholds, the number of pirates decreased significantly. In 1692, a huge earthquake that was followed by a tsunami erased a well-known pirate haven from the map, Port Royal in Jamaica. But piracy in the Indian Ocean never fully disappeared. Modern pirates might not have an eye patch or a parrot on their shoulder, but they mean business just as the pirates from the past. The Strait of Malacca connects the Indian Ocean to the Pacific, and today, around 40% of world trade takes place through it. Despite this fact, piracy was alive and well here even in the 21st century. The national authorities of Malaysia and Indonesia, 2 countries the strait separates, were finally able to curb piracy only in 2016. No, it's not a romantic story at all.
Just like Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, Captain Kidd was a pirate who sailed around looking for treasure. Only he was less charming and more dangerous. As the legend goes, he was so protective of his loot that he is still out there, guarding it as a ghost. William Kidd, who became famous as Captain Kidd, was born around the 1650s. He told people his birthplace was Dundee, Scotland, but many people think it was a lie. When he was a young man, Kidd settled in New York City. He became friends with powerful people, including 3 governors. Some stories suggest he started his maritime adventures as a rookie on a pirate ship before becoming a well-known sailor. By 1689, Kidd had already become part of a pirate crew. When they were sailing in the Caribbean, Kidd and other men on the ship rebelled. They overpowered the captain and renamed their ship Blessed William, making Kidd the new captain. Kidd gained experience and even assisted certain countries during battles. Once, the governor didn't pay the crew for their services, and Kidd and his team attacked a French island, Marie Galante, and looted it, collecting a huge amount of money. In 1691, Kidd married a woman named Sarah Bradley, who was one of the richest women in New York. She had been married twice before him and was a widow. Her money came as an inheritance from her previous husbands. A few years later, the man in charge of New York, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire asked Captain Kidd to go after some pirates. This wasn't just any request. It had the support of the king and carried a lot of importance. If Kidd had said no, people would have thought he was disloyal and looked down on him. This was the start of the journey that made Captain Kidd famous as a pirate and a character in stories. This trip was funded by a few noble lords who were some of the most powerful people in England at that time. The king himself signed a letter that gave Kidd permission to be a privateer, which is basically a pirate who can do all piratey things with a legal license. This letter said that 10% of the treasure he may find would go to the king. To get some extra cash for the trip, Kidd had to sell one of his ships, the Antigua. And for his special voyage, Kidd got a new ship called the Adventure Galley. It was perfect for chasing pirates, with 34 cannons, oars, and a crew of 150 men. The oars were handy because they let the ship move even when the wind wasn't blowing. Kidd was very picky about his crew, choosing only the best and most loyal officers. But as the adventure galley sailed, something strange happened. Kidd was expected to salute a Navy yacht, but he did not. So, the Navy yacht fired a shot to show Kidd he needed to pay respect. But Kidd and his crew decided to do the opposite. They turned around and slapped their backsides in disrespect. After this, the Navy captain got angry and took many of Kidd's crew members to work for the Navy, even though privateer crews were usually free from this obligation. Kidd, short of men, sailed to New York, where he captured a French ship. To replace his lost crew, he hired a lot of known criminals, some of whom were likely former pirates. In September 1696, Captain Kidd set sail for the Cape of Good Hope in Africa. His journey faced troubles right from the start. Cholera caused many of his crew to get sick and pass away. Even worse, their brand new ship started to have lots of leaks. Kidd was also on a mission to catch some pirates in the Indian Ocean, but he couldn't find them. As his big plan started falling apart, Kidd got desperate to make money to cover his costs. The worst happened a few months later. Kidd attacked one of his own crew members because the man wanted to board a Dutch ship, but it would have been considered an act of piracy. The man passed away due to his injury. Things were going downhill fast for Kidd, and a Royal Navy officer declared him a pirate. Kidd changed his ship's flag to look like it was French and captured a big Indian ship called the Gobekli Merchant. It was loaded with valuable stuff like silk, gold, and silver. Kidd decided to keep the Gobekli Merchant and sailed to Madagascar. There he met another pirate named Robert, who had taken Kidd's ship years ago. There are two different stories about how it went. One says Kidd was nice to him, and the other says Kidd was scared and wanted to wait for his backup to attack. But whatever the case, most of Kidd's crew left him to join Robert. Kidd decided to give up and go back home. He left his old ship, the adventure galley, behind as it was falling apart. Before he set it on fire, he took all valuables from it and boarded the adventure prize. The British authorities had a law that offered pardons to pirates in the Indian Ocean, but they made sure Kidd couldn't get one. They didn't want to forgive him because he was connected to some powerful people in England. Kidd found out he was wanted as soon as he reached Anguilla, and he couldn't use the pardon. The government had changed, and new leaders wanted to use him to make their rivals look bad. They thought Kidd would spill the beans about his powerful supporters. However, Kidd refused to reveal any names, believing that his friends would come to his rescue, but they failed him. Some say he might have escaped punishment if he had talked, but he didn't. Kidd was sent to London to stand trial before the High Court of Admiralty. They accused Kidd of piracy on the high seas and the accident with a crew member. While he waited for his trial, he was locked up in the notorious Newgate prison. They found him guilty on all counts and sentenced him to public execution, though many questioned if the evidence was enough for such a harsh verdict. He was executed on May 23, 1701. His body was displayed over the River Thames for 3 years, as a warning to anyone thinking about becoming a pirate. Some of Kidd's crewmen were supposed to be punished in the same way, but they were set free before their executions. The loot Captain Kidd had collected over the years made people believe he must have hidden it somewhere. This sparked loads of treasure hunts in different places. Some people say that Kidd might have hidden the treasure on the Rahway River in New Jersey, just across from Staten Island. Evidence suggests that Captain Kidd hid a small stash of treasure on Gardiner's Island, near New York. It was supposedly found and sent to England as proof against Kidd in his trial for piracy. Around the Bay of Fundy, people have been looking for Kidd's treasure since at least 1875. They believed he hid it there during his time as a privateer. There's a place on the island called Money Cove because of these stories. Considering how Kidd met his sad and unfair fate, it's not surprising that people have claimed to see the ghost of Captain Kidd. Some people reported spotting him at Trinity Churchyard as if he was searching for his own grave. There's also a story of two men who tried to look for Kidd's jewels in 1825. They actually found a treasure box. But before they could crack it open, the ghost of Captain Kidd himself rose up from the ground next to the treasure chest. This sight was so terrifying that it made the men pass out. Both of them claimed to have seen a truly creepy figure emerge from the earth. It breathed out sulfur fumes and seemed to glide over the ground. Thankfully, there is no solid evidence that confirms these ghost stories.
A ship is traveling across the Atlantic Ocean when a storm starts. At first, the situation doesn't seem to be very bad, but soon, people on board the ship realize that the storm is intensifying. Waves are huge, and nothing can save the ship. It's starting to sink. On board, there's only one lifeboat. Sadly, it can only hold one person. The captain is in a terrible situation. He needs to decide which passenger can be given a chance to survive. Besides the captain, there are 8 people on board. Some of them seem to be lovely. Others look like villains. But you might not know the truth until it's too late. The first passenger is Alex, a 28-year-old talented artist. He's just had his first international exhibition and is boasting about that left and right. He claims to dream of inspiring the world with his art, but did I mention it's his shy twin brother who painted those masterpieces? And Alex just steals his shine? Next is 23-year-old Maria, who's 8 months pregnant. She's quite spoiled, often behaves unreasonably, and treats the staff on board badly. She's traveling home to her husband, but little does he know that the kid is not his, but his best friend's. And she's been cheating on him since forever. Though we can't let this innocent soul perish, can we? Despite his untidy appearance, this 65-year-old scientist, Professor Marcus, is a leading researcher in the field of gene therapy. He's working on a breakthrough that could save millions of lives, but there are skeletons in his closet too. It's been 15 years since anyone saw his wife, Judith. Does Marcus's scientific progress have something to do with the mysterious disappearance of his wife? Dr. Anna is 34 years old. She's a surgeon who's saved hundreds of lives during natural disasters. She succeeded as a doctor, but failed as a parent. Her 3 daughters live with their dad and don't want to hear anything about their mother. 78-year-old Teresa is a widow whose family gave up on her because of her bad temper. She's traveling for the last time in her life to visit her late husband's grave. A little boy, Mark, is just 7 years old, but his unruly character has caused a lot of arguments between the other passengers. He's traveling alone since his parents are supposed to meet him on the shore. This brat's parents are too busy working, so he gets more and more uncontrollable. Who knows what he'll be capable of doing in 10 years or so? A robot android, Alpha 3, is also on board the ship. It has an artificial intelligence created to assist in expeditions. It can also control the ship in emergency cases. And the last passenger is Emily. This beautiful and charming woman is 30 years old. She lives off of powerful, old, rich men and has enough money to burn. She hasn't worked a single day in her entire life and just travels the world. To make his choice, the captain invites each of the passengers to listen to their stories. He asks each of them just one question. Why would you be the one to survive? Alex says, "You see, my art can inspire and change the world. Looking at my works, they help people see the beauty of life, especially during difficult times. I must continue living. I have so much to show through my paintings." Maria answers, "Can't you see that a new life is growing inside my body? It's me and my unborn kid who must survive. We risk losing a talented doctor or an artist in the future. It's not just my life we're talking about." Professor Marcus says, "My work is not finished yet. It might save thousands of lives. I'm close to a breakthrough and I need to live to make it." Dr. Anna says, "My hands save lives. I have proven many times that I can do the impossible in extreme conditions. The world can't lose my skills and knowledge. The elderly woman begs,
Please, you must understand me. I might have lived a long life, but I want to see my husband's grave.
Mark says,
I'm still a kid. My parents are waiting for me at home. I want to hug my mom and dad.
Alpha 3 states that it was created to serve and help people. Its ability to analyze situations and make rational decisions in a crisis can be used to prevent future disasters. Emily admits,
Look at me. Doesn't every person have their unique value? I'm young and beautiful, and I have a lot of potential. Surely you see it.
the captain is desperate. How can he, a mere mortal, decide who should live and who he should take this chance away from? After pacing his cabin and hitting the walls with his fists, he decides to estimate passengers' value and see how useful they are. Alex, as a talented artist, can influence society through his art, providing inspiration for thousands of people who will see his masterpieces. But no one knows where his ego can bring him. Plus, remember who the real artist is. Saving Maria means saving her unborn child. But however cynical it may sound, the contribution of these two lives to the future of society is assumed, but not guaranteed. What if that child grows up to become a criminal? Professor Marcus can indeed provide significant benefits to society through his scientific research, but he isn't young. What if he doesn't live long enough to finish his work? Dr. Anna is a surgeon. She's already saved a lot of lives and will definitely continue to do so in the future. Her ability to provide immediate medical assistance in critical situations makes her one of the most valuable candidates for survival, since she can directly and regularly save lives. At the same time, she is a terrible mother, and it'll definitely influence the lives of her daughters. Teresa is living history and experience, but unfortunately, her ability to continue contributing to society is limited. In simple words, she's old, and we don't know how much time she has left. Mark is in a similar situation. He has the potential for a long and productive life, but his immediate contribution to society is limited. His survival is based on the potential for future contribution, which is difficult to estimate at the moment. Alpha 3 can provide valuable technical assistance and functional support, but as a robot, it does not add to human well-being directly. As for Emily, despite her beauty, her achievements are minimal. On the other hand, she's only dating wealthy and influential people, and thus has a lot of influence on society of her own. Now, from the perspective of how much profit each of the passengers can bring, saving Dr. Anna seems to be one of the most logical choices. Her knowledge and skills can save many lives in the future, which means the greatest good for the greatest number. But let's have a look at the captain's choice. In the end, after listening to all the passengers and pressed for time, the man decides to save Emily. Can you figure out why he's made such an unexpected choice? Write your answer in the comments below. You can also pause the video to think it over. Okay, I suppose you're ready for the answer to be revealed. You see, even though each passenger presented very compelling arguments for why they should be saved, the captain was particularly moved by Emily's charm and attractiveness. And even though there were more logical candidates in terms of utilitarianism and humanism, the captain succumbed to his personal feelings and preferences, which influenced his decision. This riddle illustrates that in real life, people often make choices based on their sympathies and preferences rather than logic or public benefit. This is because emotions and personal relationships can have a strong influence on our perception of situations and decision-making. Here's a real-life example. HR managers tend to choose candidates they like or share common interests with, and it doesn't matter that other candidates might have more suitable skills or experience. This phenomenon is known as the similarity effect. Now, I've got an important question for you. Which passenger would you save? Share your choice in the comments. But I'd like to remind you that there is no correct answer. Strange and amazing items are discovered often, but figuring out what our ancestors were up to is pretty tough. Especially when all you have are just some rusty cups and cave drawings. It's no surprise that even the experts in lab coats sometimes make mistakes. But it's not just about dusty plates and huge stones. Sometimes there's even humans with large heads. So grab your digging tools and let's travel back to ancient times to explore incredible societies that even scientists can't fully explain. Sardinia may look idyllic now, but I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't fancy visiting it 3,000 years ago. Rumor has it, terrible giants roamed around this island back then. People even talk about finding human skeletons over 13 feet tall there, although nobody's ever shown anything to prove it. But the stories will make you wonder because some weird stuff has definitely happened. In 1974, over 5,000 pieces of broken stone artifacts were found in a part of the island called Monte Prama, but instead of being displayed in a museum, they were locked up in an underground vault for about 30 years. Sounds a bit suspicious, doesn't it? When they were finally displaced in 2005, scientists put the pieces together to find statues of 38 giant men standing 8 feet tall. Not quite as tall as the legendary skeletons, but still pretty huge. It's thought these statues were made by the Nuragic people, who lived on the island a long time ago. Besides giant statues, they also built over 8,000 massive stone buildings. Perhaps Nuragic weren't giants themselves, but they definitely liked their things big. I do too. I like a big number of likes on our videos. That would be pretty great. Thank you if you liked this and subscribed. Now back to the video. You and I are pretty smart, but we might not be the smartest humans ever. Actually, we might not even be the smartest species. Since 1913, some skull fossils found in South Africa have hinted at a possibly smarter contender called Boskop Man. This human-like species might have lived as recently as 10,000 years ago. Their skull suggests they had really big heads, which means their brains could have been 30% bigger than ours. Wow! Their average IQ could have been around 149, making them among the smartest 0.05% of people today. But if a Boskop brainiac was so much smarter, why are they not around and we are? Well, bigger isn't always better, you know. Our brains are a lot bigger than our ape relatives, mainly in the prefrontal cortex. This part helps with high-level tasks like making decisions, remembering things short-term, and being aware of ourselves. The parts of the brain that handle our senses and movements haven't really grown much. So, maybe the Boskops spent too much time dwelling on the past rather than doing practical things like hunting. But this is all just guessing. We really don't know what happened to these clever cousins of ours. Some people even argue that Boskops weren't any different from us, with the only evidence being parts of skulls. The jungle is huge. Did you know the Amazon rainforest is home to about 30% of all the world's plant and animal species? That's impressive. However, the history of one native species, humans, has long puzzled scientists. The mysterious Kasarabe people lived here for hundreds of years and then vanished around 1400 AD. People thought the Amazon only had a few scattered tribes, but recently we discovered big, unusual shapes in the ground called geoglyphs. These might look like simple shallow ditches, but they're actually the remains of a vast civilization that spread over 5,000 square miles and includes about 450 markings, some as wide as 1,300 feet. That's insane! They likely contained ceremonial buildings and could have hosted up to 1 million people as recently as 550 years ago. Thanks to new technology like LiDAR, which uses a safe laser to map the forest without harming it, we can explore deeper. In 2019, some scans showed miles of raised roads and pathways and even pyramids over 70 feet tall. They found 26 separate settlements, 2 of which were at least 250 acres each. Damn, that's like 330 soccer fields. It's not certain what happened to the Kasarabe people. Maybe European conquistadors drove them out. Maybe the most baffling ancient civilization is one we've never actually found a trace of. Yep, I'm talking about Atlantis, the grand city that supposedly sank into the ocean. The first mentions of Atlantis come from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who talked about a great city near the Strait of Gibraltar. But for ages, everyone just thought Plato made up Atlantis as a perfect version of his own Athens. So why, about 12,000 years after it supposedly vanished, do we still wonder if it might be real? Well, in the 19th century, U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly wrote a book giving 13 reasons why he thought Atlantis was more than just a myth. Then, in 1965, some folks thought they actually found Atlantis when they discovered the Richat structure, a massive 25-mile-wide dome in Mauritania, Africa. It's so big that you can see the whole thing from space. 2 astronauts flying over the Sahara Desert spotted this giant eye staring back at them and thought they'd made the discovery of a lifetime. Unfortunately, there's no solid evidence linking this structure to Atlantis. It's believed to have formed from volcanic activity about 100 million years ago. But it does look suspicious, doesn't it? Still, we're no closer to knowing the truth. Imagine going back to about 3,300 BCE and finding yourself in South Asia. Welcome to the Harappan civilization. These people were way ahead of their time. They had cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, complete with baked brick houses, sophisticated drainage systems, and even public baths. This place might have had over 5 million people, making it one of the densest regions at the time. They also invented a system of standardized weights that was incredibly useful for traders. And trading they did. These people had connections stretching all the way to the Middle East, thanks to their great skills in metallurgy. They even had a form of ancient branding. The seals were used to stamp clay on trade goods. Despite being so advanced with a thriving urban life, there's a whole bunch of mystery shrouding their language and script. We've got bits and pieces of their writing, but no one's deciphered them yet, even with all the technology we have today. We also still don't know how exactly their society worked. It looks like they didn't flaunt their social status as much as other civilizations. No grand palaces or massive monuments. Instead, their largest buildings might have been granaries. They sure were practical. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Around 1800 BCE, this bustling civilization started to decline, possibly due to shifts in river patterns. As the environment changed, the Harappans packed up, moving towards more hospitable lands. Ever heard of the Minotaur? The beast with a bull's head and a man's body, hunting the bravest travelers in a massive maze. Well, this wasn't just any old tale. It was one of the most popular dramas of the ancient world. And it was inspired by this place, the island of Crete. The Minoans lived here during the Bronze Age. They had stunning palaces, amazing frescoes, and a culture so rich it still fascinates historians to this day. They built places like Knossos, which was so complex with its multi-story buildings and elaborate hallways that it might have inspired the whole labyrinth myth. Their engineering was so ahead of its time that even their drainage systems were more advanced than what many of us have today. Let me know in the comments which of these stories you find the most fascinating, and thanks for watching.
On October 30th, 1759, the inhabitants of the Middle East were jolted awake by an earthquake. Cracks appeared in the walls of their homes, roofs began to crumble. People ran out of their homes and gathered in open areas. But because of strong shocks, they kept losing their footing and falling. A month later, there was another earthquake, but it turned out to be even stronger. Trees broke, houses collapsed, deep cracks appeared in the ground. The disaster lasted for 2 minutes. Oases, roads, and cities were destroyed. Incredibly, Baalbek's ancient buildings withstood earthquakes. Some historians state that this majestic and mysterious place was built during the Roman Empire, but many researchers disagree. Whatever the truth is, the city is one of the main archaeological phenomena of humankind. The most amazing building of Baalbek is the Temple of Jupiter. The inhabitants of the Roman Empire believed that Jupiter held power over lightning and thunder. The building looked like a platform with 54 columns. A massive roof rested on these columns. Today, you can only see 6 70-foot-high columns. Each of them consists of 3 sections and resembles a pencil. The cores of these pencils were made of lead. This made the columns exceptionally strong. Each of these pieces of stone weighed an incredible 80 tons. That's the weight of 35 Ford Explorer SUVs. Look, this is the largest block in the Great Pyramid of Giza. But compared to the blocks from Baalbek, it doesn't even look that impressive. The foundation under the Temple of Jupiter was preserved. That's how specialists figured out it consisted of about 25 monolithic stones, weighing 450 tons each. It means that the blocks from Baalbek weigh almost 4 times more than the blocks from Egypt. There are 3 more enormous limestone blocks in the foundation. They weigh 800 tons each. This is more than twice the weight of a Boeing 747 plane. Ancient builders must have had a hard time carving such giants from a piece of stone. And after that, they also had to pull them to the construction site and lift them to a significant height. Repeating these logistics would probably turn out to be a nightmare for present-day builders. To do this amount of work, they would need modern equipment. But Baalbek's constructors didn't have trucks, cranes with circular saws, or electricity. How did the builders of the past manage to do this? Scientists have a theory that includes ropes, winches, and lever systems. Naturally, the engineers of the past made all the gadgets from wood. Around 3,000 feet away from the ruins of the temple complex, there's a quarry. Archaeologists suppose that's where the stones for the construction were cut. They found a block of limestone there. It seemed to be too large, even for this incredible place. The monolith got called the Stone of the South. It was 65 feet long and 13 feet wide. The ancient builders didn't have time to completely separate it from its mother rock. A group of scientists from Austria estimated that this piece of limestone weighed more than 1,000 tons. That's like 3 Boeing aircraft or 160 African elephants. There was another surprise awaiting the archaeologists near the Stone of the South. It was the second monolith that weighed more than 1,200 tons. But the ancient builders didn't stop at that. They continued to work. In 2014, in the same quarry, German archaeologists unearthed a block that weighed 1,650 tons. No one has figured out yet why people of the past needed a piece of stone that weighed as much as 125 school buses. It's also unclear how they were going to move this giant and why they didn't finish the job. In any case, this third monolith is the largest processed piece of stone in human history. There are more questions than answers. Some researchers believe that people of the past had high-tech equipment. Others don't think so, but are eager to understand how the builders managed to move those stones. There's a huge number of ancient buildings and artifacts on the planet. Lots of them make researchers scratch their heads. Near the Pyramid of Djoser in Egypt, archaeologists have found a network of tunnels. This place is called Serapeum. It contains 24 sarcophagi weighing from 70 to 100 tons. The giant boxes are carved from a single piece of granite and covered with heavy lids. The sarcophagi are perfectly symmetrical. To the touch, their walls are as smooth as glass. Even with the current level of technology, this is very difficult to do. But the ancient Egyptians managed this feat. The Lycurgus cup is a priceless artifact and example of ancient nanotechnology. It's made of glass that can change its color. If you put a source of light in front of the cup, it turns green. If the light is behind the goblet, it becomes deep red. In this case, the figure of Greek king Lycurgus turns pale purple. Scientists understood how this color change worked only at the end of the 20th century. Through microscopes, they saw nanoparticles of silver, gold, and copper. They had been added to the glass matrix. Thanks to this, you can observe a color change called dichroism. Interestingly, the gold and silver were grounded into a fine dust. It's almost impossible to do this by accident. Most likely, the ancient experts knew for sure what they were doing. Bolivia has a curious place called Puma Punku. It looks as if an ancient giant played there with an enormous construction set. And after the game, they forgot to put the pieces back into the box. But there are no giants, and the huge stone blocks were carved by ancient builders over 1,500 years ago. Some of the rocks weigh 100 tons. The blocks were brought to an altitude of almost 13,000 feet above sea level from the quarry 60 miles away from the construction site. There's no forest in that area. This means the builders couldn't use trees to make wooden rollers. The monument belongs to the Inca civilization. Scientists are sure they didn't know anything about wheels. In 1992, the inhabitants of a Chinese village decided to drain a pond. Their ancestors had been using it to wash clothes and catch fish for hundreds of years. They kept pumping the water out for 17 days. At the bottom of the reservoir, they made an unexpected discovery. The villagers saw an entrance to a cave going down to a depth of 100 feet. The incredible find was named the Longyu Caves. Unknown builders carved out 320,000 square feet of galleries. There are separate rooms, bridges, pools, and columns that support the ceiling. The walls of the cave are covered with strange carved lines and patterns. Scientists haven't found any information about who built the caves and why they did it. The construction technology also remains a mystery. Antonio Stradivari lived in Italy in the 18th century. He created musical instruments. More than 600 of his works have survived to this day. 500 of them are violins. One of the instruments was sold at auction for $16 million. The violins made by this master sound clear and deep. Researchers can't understand why Stradivarius instruments produce such unique sounds. Perhaps it's all about the varnish the master used to cover the violins. The answer may also lie in the wood the instruments are made of. In those days, Europe had a cold climate. Because of this, the wood became denser, and the instruments made of it sounded especially pleasing to the ear. In the Indian city of Delhi, there's a 23-foot-high pole. It weighs 6.5 tons and is made of 98% wrought iron. The 1,600-year-old pillar has no signs of rust or decay. Scientists believe that the monument is so well preserved thanks to the dry weather and the chemical composition of the metal. It might be resistant to corrosion. And still, researchers don't know how the blacksmiths managed to make an iron pillar that's not afraid of rust. It seems like a tough feat, even for modern metallurgists. The Al-Nasla rock is divided into two parts by a perfectly straight slit. Each boulder stands on a small pedestal. Some people believe this is the evidence of ancient laser technology. But geologists think the split happened due to the ground shifting or natural vibrations that occurred under the rock. This process led to the appearance of the crack. It had been deepening for thousands of years, and gradually, the natural monument took the form you can see today.
Have you heard of Gobekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Gobekli Tepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! He instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Gobekli Tepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement, no hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Gobekli Tepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Gobekli Tepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, they carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila! You've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change, because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Gobekli Tepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Gobekli Tepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Gobekli Tepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star. This super old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Gobekli Tepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Gobekli Tepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Gobekli Tepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Gobekli Tepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Gobekli Tepe is not just home to a single temple, but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring two prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments.
You're walking down the street. You see a strange-looking antique shop called Ageless Trinkets of Mr. Bright. You're curious, so you enter there. You take a look at all the weird stuff. Suddenly, an old folded parchment paper catches your attention. It's a world map, but something's off with it. Instead of showing the countries as you know them, it shows the locations of 4 mythical lost worlds and civilizations. Mr. Bright, the shop owner, comes next to you after realizing your shock. This map won't let you find these places or anything, but I can explain to you the legends behind them if you want, he says. Let me begin with Atlantis. You might know it as Aquaman's underwater kingdom, but Atlantis, the fictional island, was actually first introduced in 2 of Plato's works. According to him, Atlantis was a highly advanced civilization that existed about 9,000 years before his own time, and its story had been passed down by poets, authors, and others. He wrote about Atlantis and its citizens to give a moral lesson and to teach about the dangers of arrogance, as well as the eventual downfall of those who are after too much power. In his dialogues, Plato stated that Atlantis was a great and powerful empire that was respected in all parts of the world. It was founded by beings who were half deities and half human, and became a great naval power after a while. Being an island filled with gold, silver, and other precious metals certainly helped their case. But besides that, it was also known for its breathtaking architecture and state-of-the-art technology, as well as its countless rare and exotic wild animals. Atlanteans were proud of their great achievements and the perfection of their civilization, but their excessive pride was going to bring their downfall. They believed they were so superior that they could gain control over any nation. This led them to launch a series of invasions. They conquered many of the Mediterranean lands, but when it was time to enter Athens, Athenians pushed back with an extraordinary force, so the Atlanteans were finally defeated. Plato stated that deities then got angry at Atlanteans because of how wicked, greedy, and immoral they became. So they punished them by sending earthquakes, which caused Atlantis to sink beneath the sea. Although the earliest written records of Atlantis were Plato's works, some people still believed his story to be based on truth and tried to identify the island of Atlantis with actual countries. Some people suggested it may have been located in the Mediterranean Sea, near the coast of Spain or Italy. Others thought it may have been located in the Caribbean, off the coast of Central or South America, but there was no solid evidence to support any of these claims. One theory, in particular, seemed more plausible than the others, though. Located in the Aegean Sea, the island of Santorini was the home of a highly advanced Minoan society. However, due to a huge volcanic eruption, it was destroyed about 3,600 years ago, causing the Minoan civilization to suddenly disappear. These similarities between the fictional Atlanteans and the historical Minoans made Santorini a good candidate for the speculations. Yet again, there were still major flaws with it, such as how the time when Plato said Atlantis was destroyed doesn't coincide with the time of Santorini's eruption. So Atlantis still continues to be regarded as nothing more than a popular legend in the scientific world. Now, let's move toward the northeast direction on the map, Mr. Bright says. According to Celtic Breton mythology, there once was a magnificent city called Ys, also known as Caris, that towered over Douarnenez Bay in France's Brittany region. It was the most wealthy city in the entire Atlantic. It was especially famous for its beautiful gardens and buildings, and its citizens were all living comfortably and happily there. Dahut, who was King Gradlon's daughter in Breton legends and literature, had a deep love for the sea. She begged her father to build a city at the edge of the sea, and that is how the city of Ys was established. Little did she know that she would be the one responsible for the destruction of her father's beloved gift. You see, since the city was surrounded by the sea, it needed to be protected by a dike equipped with floodgates, and these gates could only be opened at low tide. And the only one who had the keys to these gates was the king himself. One day, a handsome red knight arrived at the city, but couldn't pass the gates. Dahut was so taken by him that she wanted to let him in. She knew that her father was the keeper of the only key to the city, so she sneaked into his room and stole it from him. Then she gave it to the Red Knight so that he could enter the city and they could be together. However, the Red Knight turned out to be the Prince of Darkness, and he intentionally left the gate open to the raging sea. The waves soon swallowed all of Ys. King Gradlon was able to escape on his magical horse, but Dahut couldn't. She turned into an evil mermaid who lured sailors into the sea. Today, if you go to Quimper, a city in Brittany, northwest France, you can find the statue of King Gradlon riding on his horse. Although the city of Ys is a legend, Brittany coast locals believe that on the days when the waters are calm, you can still hear the tolls of the city bells deep under the sea, if you listen carefully. Mr. Bright then points at the Indian Ocean on the map and says, "Now, have you heard about Lemuria?" Back in the mid-1800s, a few scientists suggested that there was once a continent that existed in the Indian Ocean, somewhere close to the south of modern-day Sri Lanka. The first one to popularize this theory was the British lawyer and zoologist Philip Lutley Sclater. In his paper, The Mammals of Madagascar, he stated that he found lemur fossils in India, and not in Africa. However, this discovery was extremely shocking to him because of the fact that lemurs' original homeland, Madagascar, is much closer to Africa. He proposed that this was possible only if some larger continent connected the two once. He stated that this continent must have eventually sunk to the ocean floor. He then named it Lemuria, and hence the theory was born. People who came after Sclater took his theory a step further and thought that Lemuria was also the home of an extinct race of humans called Lemurians, who had 4 arms and enormous bodies, and were also the ancestors of modern-day humans, as well as lemurs. Of course, as new scientific discoveries were made on plate tectonics, evolution, and the study of DNA, the theories regarding the fictional continent called Lemuria were debunked. The last fictional land on the map is Agartha, Mr. Bright says. Taking its roots from Eastern mysticism, one legend says there's a kingdom called Agartha that is located deep beneath the surface of the earth. It's where all 4 corners of the world are connected by paths and tunnels. It is said that there's a secret entrance into Agartha hidden in the Gobi Desert, and it's built by Agarthans themselves using advanced technology that can't be detected by us, the surface folks. According to some beliefs, Agartha exists to counterbalance the energies of those who live above the surface. While we live in a state of rush and heightened emotions, this world beneath us is the total opposite. Some even say that those who escaped Atlantis fled here, to continue their lives inside the Earth's core. And yet, others think it's actually a land that's crawling with all kinds of monsters. But there's no need to be scared, since modern science proved Earth's core is not actually hollow and is a solid hot iron ball. So you can cancel your journey plans to the center of the Earth if you've made any. Thanks, Mr. Bright.